We are now getting reports from Donald Trump's meeting that took place with a group of business leaders in Washington, D.C. yesterday, and we hear it was an absolute disaster. After Donald Trump gave that disastrous meeting with House Republicans, he met with about 80 or so business leaders, and the word that keeps coming up over and over again is meandering, that Donald Trump could not speak in coherent sentences and would say a bunch of word salad that absolutely made no sense. One CNBC reporter who has numerous sources who were there said that even CEOs who were predisposed to favoring Donald Trump because he's promising to reduce their taxes was just perplexed by Donald Trump's behavior. Here it is on CNBC. Let me play this one first. Let's play it.
I will say I was surprised. I spoke to a number of CEOs who I would say walked into the meeting being Trump supporter-ish or thinking that they might be leaning that direction, who said that he was remarkably meandering, could not keep a straight thought, was all over the map, and that they, which maybe not surprising, but was interesting to me because these were people who I think might have been actually predisposed to him and actually walked out of the room less predisposed to him, actually predisposed to thinking this is not necessarily, as one person said, this may not be any different or better than a Biden thought if you're thinking that way.
You notice there, too, at the end, they find a way to try to attack President Biden, who, by the way, is presiding over an economy that is far better than Donald Trump's disastrous economy. I mean, you have President Biden where there's now more drilling than ever before, where there's low unemployment, record low unemployment, where President Biden's managed to get inflation under control that was caused by Donald Trump adding trillions and trillions in debt. More than 25 to 30% of all debt in the United States was caused by Donald Trump. From the perspective of both focusing on climate change while also still drilling, there's more domestic drilling for oil in the United States than ever before. President Biden quite literally broke OPEC, who had to reduce their prices because of the output in the United States of America. But here's the thing. Because of Trump's meandering behavior, what do the propagandists do? What do the Murdoch entities do? Here is the cover of the New York Post today. It says, "Meander in Chief. Biden embarrasses U.S. with confused wanderings at World Conference." It's quite literally an altered image that they use on New York Post. President Biden is speaking to a skydiver who landed at the G7 summit, and the New York Post cropped it so you don't see that individual. And then they say Biden's wandering off. As this fact check says, Biden didn't wander off. After viewing a skydiving demo with other G7 leaders, Biden stepped aside to speak with one of the skydivers who was kneeling on the ground packing away his parachute. The video that's being used has been digitally altered to remove the skydiver. The same way the New York Post would have on its cover just defamatory things like Joe Bribin. Remember when the MAGA Republicans would trot out Russian spies and Chinese spies to provide false information on President Biden? The cover said Joe Bribin. And that's what they're relying on to try to bring down President Biden and hoist up someone like Donald Trump who can't speak in complete sentences. Got more information from this meeting with Donald Trump and the business leaders. This was from Morning Joe. The same reporter at CNBC describes some additional data of what took place, including the fact that, like, when Donald Trump was asked why he would be supportive of a corporate federal tax rate of 20% versus 21%, Donald Trump's response is, well, I like round numbers. Here, play this clip.
Andrew, more takeaways from Trump's meeting with business leaders. What was the reception like?
Well, it was interesting. I spoke to a number of the CEOs who were at that meeting yesterday, a number of whom, frankly, had been predisposed to President Trump, in fact, former President Trump. And they walked away from that meeting, I think, a bit disheartened, a bit questioning, I don't want to say his mental fitness, but questioning just how meandering, how in some cases one said to me, he could not keep a thought straight. He would go in one direction and then he'd go in another direction, and that there wasn't really necessarily a through line to the way he spoke or what even he was talking about. At one point, and you described it earlier, he discussed his plans to bring the tax rate down from the corporate tax rate down from 21% to 20%. And apparently at some point in the meeting was asked about why he had chosen 20%. And he said, well, it's a round number. And I think that unto itself had a number of CEOs shaking their head, given that 1% of the total tax burden on the country is actually a huge number in terms of what is needed to support the revenue for this country. So while I do think that there are policies and major policy differences between President Biden and the former President Trump, and that many in the business community think ultimately that some of the policies that President Trump would enact may very well be better, at least for business, than the ones that President Biden has on offer. I think there was a concern about whether we were going to see a similar movie to the last presidency, where there were so many different issues that came up and made their jobs not easier, but ultimately harder.
And again, over and over again, we're hearing these CEOs and everybody who's in a room with him, we see it for ourselves, saying Donald Trump is remarkably meandering. He cannot keep a straight thought. He was all over the map. Again, just take a look at some current economic data under President Biden. Surprising U.S. economy is powering a better global outlook, the World Bank says. This next article, Americans have more investment income than ever before. A booming economy and rising household wealth help consumers keep spending. The U.S. economy reaches superstar status. And then meanwhile, with all of these, business leaders go, oh, I think Donald Trump may be good for business, despite the fact that he was bad for business during the first administration. But he did give us those tax cuts. Just take a look at the SEC filing from Trump Media, which was required to disclose Trump's business history. Like, what are we talking about here? This is Trump's business history. This is what he had to disclose. So imagine what else is not in here. This was Trump's disclosure. A number of companies that were associated with Trump have filed for bankruptcy. There can be no assurances that Trump Media will not also become bankrupt. Entities associated with Trump have filed for bankruptcy. The Trump Taj Mahal, which was built and owned by Trump, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 1991. The Trump Plaza, the Trump Castle, and the Plaza Hotel, all owned by Trump at the time, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 1992. THCR, which was founded by Trump in 1995, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2004. Trump Entertainment Resorts, the new name given to Trump hotels after the 2004 bankruptcy, declared bankruptcy in 2009. While all of the foregoing were in different businesses than Trump Media, there can be no guarantees Trump Media's performance will exceed these. Okay, what about other companies he's been affiliated with? Well, a number of companies that had license agreements with Trump have failed. There can be no assurances that Trump Media will also not fail. For example, Trump Shuttle, launched by Trump in 1989, defaulted on its loan in 1990 and ceased to exist by 1992. Trump University, founded by Trump in 2005, ceased operations in 2011 amidst lawsuits and investigations regarding the company's business practices. Trump Vodka, a brand of vodka produced by Drinks America, under license from Trump Organization, was introduced in 2005 and discontinued in 2011. Trump Mortgage LLC, a financial services company founded by Trump in 2006, ceased operations in 2007. GoTrump.com, a travel site founded by Trump in 2006, ceased operations in 2007. Trump Steaks, a brand of steak and other meats founded by Trump in 2007, discontinued sales 2 months after its launch. While all these businesses were in different industries than Trump Media, there can be no guarantee that Trump Media's performance will exceed the performance of these entities. The guy is screwed up and bankrupted like almost everything he's ever touched, and he's failed at everything over and over again. He's not a builder. He is a destroyer. And on the other hand, you've got Oil's getting, like the price of oil is falling after President Biden's incredible maneuvers by opening up the strategic. OPEC was trying to drive them up to control us, just showing the power of the U.S. oil market right there, and then selling high and then buying low to replenish the reserves. We get information like this every day. Like even Fox had to report things like when the jobs numbers come out because they're rooting for it to be lower. Here is Fox having to report just last week that the jobs estimate that the jobs created were 272,000, exceeding even the highest estimates. Here, play this clip.
This is something. 272,000.
Nancy Lazar was right. She was right.
She was right.
272,000. Everybody, the estimate was 185,000. And by the way, that blows even the top of the range from economists going in. The range was 120 to 258, and we came in at 272.
Also, you have the Dow Jones, S&P 500, NASDAQ composite indexes right now closing at record highs, following news that inflation is cooling, and record highs of the stock market under President Biden, record corporate profits. Here, play this clip.
The new record close for the Dow up 342, record close for the S&P and the NASDAQ. My goodness, all sorts of records breaking today.
And look, here's what President Biden said, not meandering at all. President Biden says, I was watching a Fox News commentator saying, Biden's changing from trickle-down economics to build from the middle out and bottom up, and that's going to be a disaster. And Biden's like, what are you talking about? Our economy's the best economy in the world right now, and we're focused on the worker. Play the clip.
Look, I was watching on television last night about 2 in the morning after we got back to the house. The White House. Still hard to think of it as home. I had the TV on, and there was a Fox News commentator saying, Biden is changing from trickle-down economics to build from the middle out and the bottom up. It's going to ruin America. Ruin America. We have the strongest economy in the world right now.
But what is this all about for the business leaders? They're not sufficient being billionaires or decamillionaires or 100 millionaires or whatever. They're in fact making more money under Biden. So what is it about also? It's also just about their greed. And to some extent, they want to see the workers being harmed and suppressed and treated like crap. Like they get off on that because they're making a lot of money right now. But they're pissed that President Biden's saying, well, look, make all your money, but let's have an equitable system that actually helps out the workers, that helps out hardworking Americans as well, bottom up, middle out. And they hate that. They hate that. One of the one lines that they did laugh at that Donald Trump was saying at this meeting is when Donald Trump was kind of making fun of the workers who he promised when he went to Nevada that he wasn't going to tax their tips. And he's like, oh, they loved what I said that. And everybody was like laughing. And as my brother put it in a post, can't get over this moment where Trump and CEOs were literally laughing at low-wage workers who Trump promised and lied about, but promised crumbs while promising to give their corporate bosses billions in tax cuts. But compare that here to what President Biden said when he was speaking speaking to some unions. Here's what he had to say. Play the clip.
My dad had a saying. He said, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay, and mean it. People like Donald Trump learned very different lessons. He learned the best way to get rich is inherited. Not a bad way. He learned that paying taxes was something people who work for a living did, not him. He learned that telling people you're fired was something to laugh about. I guess that's how you look at the world when you're in Park Avenue or Mar-a-Lago. But if you grew up in a place like Scranton, nobody handed you anything. You paid your taxes. You made sure being told you're fired wasn't entertainment. It was a nightmare that people worried about. And all people knew, all I knew about the people like Trump who looked down on us were the people that haven't changed. They wouldn't welcome us in their homes and their clubs. Folks, where we come from matters. When I look at the economy, I don't see it through the eyes of Mar-a-Lago. I see it through the eyes of Scranton, and that's not hyperbole. That's a fact. Where honesty and decency matter. Where faith matters. Where family is everything. Where we grew up knowing in our homes that Wall Street didn't build this country. The middle class built this country. And unions built the middle class.
So judge for yourself, folks, but notice what the game is here, right? I didn't see President Biden meandering at all. He has a coherent policy, just not the policy apparently that the billionaires want. And they're willing to put in power an incoherent, meandering Donald Trump who doesn't even know what he's talking about because they're so greedy. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 3 million together. Thanks for watching.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.